Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. Let's give all the people that registered a minute to log in and join us as well before we get started. So we'll be back here in a couple of seconds. All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. There's been a lot of interest in this webinar. We can't wait to kick off this conversation about how to automate key processes in small and medium-sized organizations. A lot of people believe that automation might be very complicated or too costly, and our speakers are going to show you today how that couldn't be further from the truth. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the text box, question box below the screen. And there should also be an icon that allows you to enlarge that screen. I highly recommend that. Otherwise, some of the slides we shared today might be a little bit too hard to read. All right, let me introduce you to today's speakers. So we have Tom Helfrich here, who's our VP of Intelligent Automation. Hey, Tom, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Hey, hello, everybody. Thomas Helfrich, Vice President Intelligent Automation here at SystemSoft Technologies. Appreciate everyone joining, and look forward to the interactions and questions.
Awesome, thank you. And then we also have Steve Moritz, our Chief Digital Officer. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm good, Sebastian. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Appreciate you being on the webinar today. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for SystemSoft Technologies, and what that means is I'm responsible for designing and delivering and ensuring that we bring automation, intelligent document processing, kind of transformative digital services to our clients to help them drive their top line, engage customers, and improve productivity and collaboration across their workforce. So let me just quickly do the setup of our agenda for all of you. And again, appreciate you all being on, knowing that you all have very busy schedules. So we'll try to make very effective use of your time today. The format for this webinar, this conversation, is we want to start with just kind of grounding everyone in the typical challenges that most organizations face. And that kind of sets the bar for why automation, and specifically intelligent automation, is growing in its application, in its implementation. But the reality is that these kinds of projects are never as easy as they are billed to be. And there are some significant barriers to entry where we've seen clients, be they in commercial, be they not-for-profit, whether they're large, or in this case, we're really focusing on mid-sized businesses. We'll kind of identify what those challenges and those barriers to entering the world of intelligent automation, and then we'll walk through kind of the tactical steps, pragmatic, implementable ideas and information as to how our clients in this space have how they've overcome those challenges. Will kind of populate our messaging and our information today with real life case studies, so that we don't kind of operate at the ether level, but bring this down to kind of meaningful, implementable ideas and content. And then we'll talk about an approach that we use to kind of help our clients kind of quick start their intelligent automation journey. And then we'll follow that up with questions and answers. So let's just move very quickly into typical organizational challenges. And so again, this can be a business or it can be a not-for-profit, but these are operational, they're financial, they're kind of process-oriented. And regardless of where you are in your maturity as a business or as it could be a public sector, not for profit, The reality is you always have to be looking at how do you do better. I like to kind of bring some kind of quotes into the content just to kind of liven up the discussion. So, of course, many of us know, Forbes. So, BC Forbes said, if you don't drive your business, you will be driven out of business. And another kind of luminary in the business space is Dr. Stephen Covey. Many of you have probably read the 7 Habits books. And one of the 7 habits I really love is you got to sharpen the saw. Right, so you always have to be looking at, and in this particular case, many of our clients are attracted to intelligent automation because they are either trying to gain operating efficiencies, they're looking at driving top line. They want to use automation to either innovate their product or their customer service. Compliance in many industries, it doesn't really drive any revenue, but if you don't get it right, it certainly can cost you a lot. We see organizations that want to just find ways to serve customers in a much faster way or do internal processes much faster. So many of you have heard terms like straight through processing, how to take, whether it's an insurance endorsement or if it's a loan application, or even if it's a payment or it's a receivables transaction, how to compress the time and take the cost out of it. Some organizations candidly say, well, we have too many people. Now, I do want to quickly say that for most of our clients, intelligent automation and the implementation of robotic process automation rarely is about anything other than giving people who are doing jobs and tasks that are very routine, giving them the opportunity to kind of be unencumbered from those tasks and then reallocating their talents to activities that are much more strategic. It might be improving customer service, finding time to actually build digital marketing strategies. We also find our organizations are thinking about intelligent automation because they just want to take out processing errors because they're so costly, and therefore their customers end up on kind of the wrong side of the happiness scale. We also find that if implemented correctly, intelligent automation actually enhances employee satisfaction for the dynamic that I mentioned earlier, that employees are now doing much more fruitful, much more interesting activities. And then a lot of our clients are seeing their competitors, their peers, maybe some of their supply chain partners automate. They see the bots going in place, and of course they want to do that as well. So those are why we're having this conversation. That's why we're seeing our clients looking for assistance to drive intelligent automation. Now let's then talk about the types of barriers, right? So that's kind of the aspiration, right? That's the dream state. People want to address those challenges. And Tom will talk more about, what the actual aspects of intelligent automation are and the specific steps that help our clients address and overcome these barriers. Let's give you a quote real quick. So Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're going to be right. And the point of that quote, the reason I like it is implementing robotic process automation and maybe the more sophisticated version of that, which we call intelligent automation, isn't necessarily as easy as some may make it out to be. And we'll drill into the reasons and how to overcome those in the next 40 minutes or so. And I've just picked a couple. I'll call these the 80-20 barriers to entry, meaning these are maybe 20% of the total reasons, but they kind of constitute 80% of the friction, 80% of the barrier as to why when some clients ask us to come in and remediate, these are some of the issues we see. So we may find that the technology folks are resistant because bots and intelligent automation are going into their systems. They're executing transactions. They're logging in, and that's a little worrisome. And also, a lot of the vendors that sell the software in this space, they're actually selling it into the business community. And their powerful messaging is, we're going to give you this amazing kind of designer studio. You can create your own bots. You can do drag and drop, and you'll be up and running, and you'll be automating accounts receivable or accounts payable overnight. Now, granted, that may not entirely be the case, but that creates kind of some fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the IT perspective. Some folks are concerned about the cost because, look, software isn't free. The vendors are in business to make money. We, of course, are in business to work with our clients, and there are costs associated with automating tasks, whether you're doing attended bots or unattended bots. They have to run somewhere. There has to be infrastructure, and we'll talk about how you identify and manage those costs. Visibility is a consideration, right? It is comforting when executives walk into an office, not that many people are in offices anymore, but pre-COVID, and you'd look over and you'd see row after row of cubicles. And it gave leadership a certain amount of comfort to say, okay, well, there are all of my people handling the customer service transactions or some of my financial transactions that are handling payables. Well, the challenge, which we'll talk about how you overcome, is in the bot world, those cubicles now have people doing different things. You have computer software that's actually, it could be 24/7, 365, handling transactions. So the visibility is a much different kind of thing than when from the pre-COVID or from the pre-RPA world. And then you have lack of business confidence because the business folks aren't the technologists, and they don't necessarily understand nor even trust that access to an ERP system or to inventory or in the world of healthcare to electronic medical records, that can happen and happen in the right secure way, that this crazy unknown software is going to execute, and it's going to execute every day and consistently. And so these are some of the challenges that we find. And again, we're going to talk, as I turn it over to Tom, it's going to do kind of some baselining on this notion of intelligent automation. Tom, I'll hand it off to you, and let's start talking about how we overcome these challenges and how we start achieving these business results that I kind of talked about on a couple slides ago. Tom?
Okay. Thank you very much, team, for the overview, and welcome everybody. What you're about to see, these next 10 steps, is typically done in a workshop in like a half a day. So if you don't get everything, you think maybe it went a little fast, it's all right. You're more welcome just to personally contact me, and I'd help you to walk through any one piece of these. But I think it's always important as a first step is to get on the same page of what intelligent automation really is and what it is not. It is, in fact, a combination of technologies that allow you to automate process, streamline process, and transition and transform your organization. They're made up of a number of technologies, of which some of the core ones are robotic process automation, which automates tasks almost at a GUI level. It's a graphical user interface. The optical character recognition technologies, which help you process documents, forms, images. Artificial intelligence or machine learning, what helps you learn, it helps predict, helps make probable next best action requests and recommendations, as well as natural language processing. So if you think chatbot, and that would also include, I should say, the generation of language and the interpretation of what's being said, sentiment. Those together, combined, create an intelligent automation platform or an intelligent automation set of technologies that allow the company to automate the tasks and processes that tend to be very repetitive across the organization. I think we do a poll question here. So in your own organization, and the polls are found in the, I may have Sebastian tell you about where that is if you don't know how to do this, but are you finding in your organization a demand for automating process, for intelligent automation but you just don't know how to do it. You don't know how to, you don't have enough people, you don't have the right experience, you don't have the right direction or beginning. But is there a demand, and are you not meeting it for some reason? And that's the poll. So I'll take about 10 seconds, do a poll. You can answer it as we're there, and we'll go from there. If I had Jeopardy music, I'd play it now.
We'll add that to the next webinar.
Copyright infringement. It's big.
True.
All right. So, and let me answer this question. What I'm seeing more and more, especially in the small and medium business, is that there is a huge demand for it. And maybe it's not, I hope that's the case for you as well, why you'd be attending this. Maybe the first few rounds is RPA extended to this technology that's now become much bigger and a much bigger play. It was too expensive, it's too hard to get in for a lot of the reasons that were mentioned earlier. But I've seen a huge demand in small, medium business to automate, especially in this pandemic world, of how do I operate my business? How do I execute? How do I drive better revenue, better customer experience, better employee engagement? But how do I do it? How do I do it at cost? How do I do it where I get value out of it quickly? So I'm seeing this quite a bit. I have lots of groups and forums that this is a big discussion. And, to continue the grounding, so just understand what the benefits are. And these may be obvious, but I think it's important to state that the increase in improvement in your workforce productivity and how you process, and the speed, the accuracy is all a benefit. Your customer experience is always a benefit, because if things are done quicker with less error, people are happier. Your customers are happier. If you're able to optimize all parts of your operation, people can spend more time as humans addressing human problems, more complex problems, sales problems, product feature problems, things like this. When you do all this, and then you can use automation even to kind of monitor all this other technology that's out there, you really have transformed your organization to be poised for the future, but also reap the benefits of what intelligent automation brings today versus what it's going to become tomorrow. And it is definitely accelerating, and taking the first few steps and getting on the right path is kind of what we're trying to target here for you. Now, by the numbers, these are industry numbers that you'll see across, Gartner, Accenture, these other companies that are out there. There's a lot of sources, but the point of these is that when this set of technologies, I should say, came out, there was a lot of hype, and a lot of hype showing that you could reduce things by 90%, reduce your staff by this, and, gain all these ROI of, thousands of percent. The reality of it is that it's an incredibly great technology, but it keeps it at probably the 30 to 50% range of what you're going to get from a benefit, from ROI, from the ability to automate process. That is an incredible gain. But the reason that's important is that when you build a business case and you build the ROI structure and you build the voice to move forward and talk about what it's going to do for the organization, it's better to use realistic numbers, not the hype numbers, not the ones that come from the vendors and the sales people out there selling this technology, but in reality. It is a fantastic step forward for using automation to improve your organization and its experience that's being presented to the world. But these reality, if you have something in this zone for your process steps, for your ROI, you are doing great. And you should be very proud of that if you get to that level. Now, what it does well. So at its core, let me back up. So in 2015, right, or even before, this term of robotic process automation got coined. Maybe even a little before that. And it was a little past screen scraping, maybe a little more powerful, but it was doing things really at the GUI level and the graphical user interface level. And it's very powerful. It doesn't, some of the same principles apply where you don't need to integrate it. It uses existing systems. It goes across legacy modern systems, green screen, think AS400 mainframe, all the way to, web-based, or even beyond to some even mobile apps. And if you look at today, the power that comes out of these platforms is intelligent automation. It's using machine learning. It's using intelligent document processing. It's using some language capability and processing. It's become more commoditized on the feature sets, and therefore, out of the box, it's way closer to what I'd call intelligent automation, which is leveraging these multiple technologies to help automate process. At the end of the day, though, what it does is still do the following very well, which is the processing of web forms, which is web data, looking at a screen and saying, oh, grab this, get this table, grab that, put it in, you extract that data from a system, be it, let's say, an ERP, a mainframe, or the web. That's very good for validating, running business rules, logic. You can apply machine learning to do more fuzzy logic against this as well. At the end of the day, though, you get better user experience. And a user here is both your employee who interacts with that system and also the customer. Those users, anybody who interacts with the system, is benefited by speed, by less mundane, boring tasks they have to go execute, less work you have to do as a human, as a customer, let's say a human customer out there going, oh, I'd like to enter this form, but now the automation takes care of all these extra things you would have had entered manually in the past. That improves the interaction and the likeliness that your customers stay. And what it has done, as it goes up the arrow towards intelligent automation, it expands where it can functionally be applied. Where initially it may have been only applied to very graphical user interface processes in HR, finance, and accounting. Now it's expanded to processing, let's say, mortgage loans, or looking at healthcare records, or going to the point of looking into documents to understand what was been said, and then assess if it's a acceptable form of a conversation, or what you would need to, how would I say, like if you're in a conversation with a customer and they're providing you data, this will give you the ability to instantly read it and understand if what they provided to you unstructured is valid. It's what you needed. And all these types of things, from structured to semi-structured, unstructured, can start to be automated. It's become much more powerful. I'd say even the curve is steeper than the one we show, and it's going to even get greater. Fundamentally, it is really moving towards an experience base that's going to not only make your customers happier, but your employees that work for you be way more engaged and happy to be doing the jobs that they're doing.
Hey, Tom, let me give you a real quick example, right, of that. Yeah, so, when you talk about user experience, and I think you really framed it well, right? We often think about kind of automation and it benefiting someone who is doing, a highly repetitive, boring task. So, in working with a financial services institution, as we were able to bring intelligent automation to loan origination, in the classic RPA sense, a lot of the processing of a loan application, as it comes in from traditional avenues, whether it's web or the mail, RPA was pretty good at taking the information, and then maybe getting it routed to the right department, doing some initial assessment on the application, maybe doing some screen scrapes to pull, let's say, borrower financial information or FICO scores. All good. But what we've seen is now expanding through intelligent document processing, is seeing an ability where that loan application, which of course includes a lot of borrower uploads. So, I need to attach certain financial documents, attribution maybe of pay stubs. It's in IA that process became much better, and it flagged maybe problems that the person wasn't actually uploading the right document. So IA was able to look at what was submitted and use intelligence to determine, well, that's not really what we're looking for. So the interplay with the borrower in this case, the experience that the borrower had was much better, right? So therefore, the application kind of was in a much better qualitative state before it got actually into the bank for subsequent processing. So that was a better experience both on the customer side and certainly a better experience back at the back office for that particular financial institution. So you can kind of see how it transcends both sides of the equation, and we kind of went from simple process automation to inclusion of intelligent document processing to make the overall experience better for both parties.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. And conscious of time, I just want to end with this. In small, medium business in particular, some very good and great areas for starting is in invoice processing, HR, and just general finance, accounting, reporting, compliance. We'll get into that maybe a bit more here in a minute. Now, you've identified your business problems, and you're like, I need to automate. I have identified one or two core business functions, burning platforms. What I see missed every time, I would say 99% of the time in the last 8 years of doing a lot of intelligent automation work all over the globe, is if I ask on day one in a workshop, what is your mission statement? It seems like such a simple thing to form, but no one ever takes the time to do it. And it's really important because it creates this narrative of why you're using technology, why you're automating, what are you trying to accomplish. And so for ours, we try to, we leverage intelligent automation to improve our customers and employees' experience. It's very direct, yet it hits the three main goals, which is overarching, focused, and it has a powerful meaning. And I think it's very important that you form this. It's the first piece. It should be simple, to the point, and it should have an idea that this is what everybody in your company or your organization should know why this initiative is going on, so they're on the same page from day one. It comes back kind of these basics. Form the mission statement, work through it, and this helps you get buy-in. It's your initial piece of like internal marketing, if you think it this way. Now, the second piece of this is you really need to understand your organization itself. This is maybe a self-assessment or how you look at it, but how your organization is organized or how your culture is really matters for the success of how the intelligent automation would be implemented. So if you're a very flat company and everyone kind of works together and really there's just one leader that says, hey, we're going to do this, this works differently than if it's a matrix acquisition-based type of a company where each business unit acts as their own. There's a chargeback model to IT. Sometimes those aren't quite as a friendly environments, let's say, for intelligent automation, but it's still achievable. There's just different things you would need to do. The idea, though, is look at your actual company itself. You want to make sure that you've addressed these things so you understand the right strategy to actually make it successful. And in this case, let's say you don't like technology, you're a lagger, you do everything yourself, you want no help from the outside, you absolutely the most matrix complex organization with broken process. Believe it or not, you still can use intelligent automation to move forward. You can do it in a very strategic way. Typically, though, in any of the organizations, the absolute certainty is you need executive and the highest level of executive support to make this work. The point of this slide is only that you have to take a look at your organization to really understand it unimpeded and really honestly. That will give you the best setup for the strategy of how to actually implement, set up your COE and execute. Now, kind of this next step of this as you're thinking through this is budget. Yes, you really do need a budget. That may seem obvious to some, and you'd be surprised that I'd say more than 50% of the time there's actually not a budget defined. Sometimes it's because you don't know what it's going to cost and you're trying to figure that out. That's actually fine. That's the first question is, what am I trying to accomplish? What's your mission? What does my organization look like? Who's going to be the first adopters? But you want to take the approach of, well, if I did a POC and then that led to a pilot, and don't think of these things as throwaway, but think I did a POC that became a pilot, that became a full-blown automation. What does that look like? And if I added more, what does that look like? Do I need to hire people internally, or outsource or blend it, or do a mixture of all this moving in? Do I build the technology myself or just buy it outright, or do I have to rent it? You should be considering all these pieces of how you'll train and how you'll work internally on the change management. And what I mean by that is, what is my message to my employees? Why am I doing this? How are they going to respond? How do I retool them to interact with these technologies? And then the financial models, there's a number of ways you can do this. You can pay as you go, which might be a short project. You could rent people's time over a 1, 2, 3 year model. There's also ways you can do gain share where both the services provider and you come together to realize the benefit. There's a lot of things you should consider, but the point is build a budget, start with something, and then it'll help you in the next few slides of determining these steps. In step 5 here, so the technology selection itself. Once you've identified the business problems, you know kind of where you're going with your mission statement. You really understand your organization, and now you have a budget of sorts. The technology you select is where you'd start looking at this. Now, for sure, one technology will not solve all these problems that you're going to be identifying. However, taking a more platform approach and not taking the approach of yet just another technology for your organization is a very smart way to think about this. You are building a digital workforce with intelligent automation. So you want a technology that is stable, you think will be around for a while, that is easy to use, it will meet your budget capabilities, fits within the architecture you have and the requirements there, and it will align. All these pieces will really make it easier to implement it, to adopt it, and really just be successful from the get-go. there's a number of technologies in the space. I'm not going to get into them here. However, taking these and making sure that you're also getting the right buy for the value you need. There's a lot of technology that's overpriced that could be met with way less costly ones. There's ones that are more expensive but add an incredible amount of value. It really depends. But the point is, when you make your technology selection, make sure they align to the points here on the screen. Now, there's accelerators. Now, you may not know what these are. So when you're doing any kind of intelligent automation, you could do a lot of things manually where you're documenting the processes yourself. You are writing all the code from scratch. You don't have a catalog, let's say, of automations to choose from. You make up standards as you go. There are a lot of technology accelerators in the form of actual technology that can do process mining, which can look at the processes as they're executed by people and actually formulate what that process looks like from a chart standpoint or from a graphical or visual. It can also then be turned into code immediately on a number of platforms. If you take this, it could take a number of so if you take 10 people in your organization, let's say, and all 10 are excellent at doing their process, maybe it's underwriting, you'll find that all 10 do it differently. And all 10 come to different conclusions based on the same set of data or rules. It's amazing, but it's true. The best performers have an incredible variance and a lot of noise in between what they do for really good processing. There are a number of technologies, though, that can create the best-in-class path of that process based on looking at all their process, how they're executing. Having this allows for the automation to be most effective, most in line with what you're trying to accomplish, and also then creates a standard of which then you can measure the success and also improve actually your employees as they execute the process alongside it. This also will help enforce things like architectural standards, coding standards, and it gets you deployed faster because you can build upon it and then you can support faster on it too. A lot of accelerators out there that are there, but look at them and see if they work within the budget, see if it's found within the platform. Something you should definitely consider to really help you move faster.
Hey, Tom, let me give you a real quick, I promise, case study. So around this whole point of finding ways to kind of automate your automation, I want to talk about a health system, a relatively small health system. So they didn't have, excessive numbers of people either on the business or on the technology side. And in this particular case, we're talking about automating some processes around health information management. So those are the folks responsible for maintaining the electronic medical records, all the paper records, for all the distribution, the security of all that. And what we were able to do in working together to kind of accelerate and automate a couple kind of key, aspects of that is, number one, by using the right technology, the right kind of intelligent automation platform, we were able to kind of have the documentation of the workflows around records retention and records submission. We're able to kind of document or automate the documentation of those flows through the platform itself. And additionally, that work was done with the people and by the people in HIM, in Health Information Management, and really not with the IT people. And to be candid, that meant a much lower cost person, number one, was doing this documentation of process, and two, the people who really knew this process well were able to do it. So that was an advantage. Then the next kind of enabler was we worked with the client. We used a particular platform that actually was good at automating actually code development, right? So yes, there was still some actual writing of code in the RPA platform, but it automated a lot of that. So that was the second aspect that really drove acceleration. And the third was in working with us where we had already built a similar solution for another healthcare organization. We maintain a catalog, and that catalog kind of had a lot of learnings. And by bringing the content, right, that and what we had delivered before, help that client do this again, compress the time, compress the cost. So, in this particular instance, a project that might have taken 8 weeks was reduced to about 4.5. And then thereafter, a lot of people that were just handling records requests were, again, unencumbered, and they were able to move to a different part of the hospital into revenue cycle, where that's all about capturing dollars. right? So it wasn't just about taking cost out. It was about automating much of the work that got done, but also gave these folks the ability to really kind of focus in much more productive endeavors than previously. Back to you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the example. That's a good illustration of this. Oop, I flew right by that, didn't I? So one of the next steps is leveraging experts. And this is an important step that's often overlooked. What I've seen from a number of organizations all over the place, from leveraging professionals to doing it themselves, is that I've consistently seen organizations that use an expert in some fashion will accelerate the adoption and the success of the actual intelligent automation journey, if you will. It doesn't have to be a full-blown, millions of dollars professional services to make this effective. There are very targeted, cost-effective ways to do this, and this could be as simple as, let's say, an assessment or a workshop to say, okay, you've kicked this off. Thank you for that time. We're going to go and do stuff and call you back to help us with this. By taking a very maybe pointed, strategically but yet tactical approach, you'll certainly reduce your risk, and you'll help you get your organization aligned for sure. And this affects the change management of what you're going to need to do for your organization itself, from rewriting job descriptions, from retraining people, from attrition that may happen, or new hires you may have to do. Setting this up right from the beginning and leveraging an expert who's gone down the road a number of times with this will really help you not trip and fall in some of the pitfalls that would happen. From the model that you may choose, from distributed, federated to centralized, there's a lot of considerations. The point being is leverage an expert at the right level. And this is one of the areas that you can certainly get a lot of value without having to spend a lot of money in. And this is one of the areas, too, where I think in the industry, there's been way too much money spent with very little value. There's a lot more experience out there. There's a really pointed way you can do this that is lower cost consulting and professional services, high value. And I'll leave that as maybe an action or a tease to give me a call to explain how that works. But that's exactly what you can do. You can have a few hours of time with a consultant or with some type of expert and get a lot out of it, and not have to be there for years and years and spending millions of dollars. There's way better ways to do this. And when you look at experts as well, you want to look at a few things of how they commercially contract with you, how they can help you negotiate the licensing of the technologies you've selected, help you pick that technology as well, make sure the right resources have been aligned to you. They also will, we come with a catalog of pre-built automations and validation scripts and things like that. So there's no need to rebuild those from scratch. That would be not the right approach. You would want to come in and say, hey, I'm trying to do invoice processing. What do you have out of the gate? And out of the, you might get 99.9% of this digitized with validation rules, getting it 75, 80% from first round. If you do it yourself with your own technology, you're going to spend months trying to get that ontology and other things built when it's already pre-done. Leveraging experts helps you get there. And in particular, then also how you set up your support ongoing. So once you have enough automations in production, so to speak, and this is beyond RPA, but this is anything leveraging models or anything else, there comes a point where your core team that you may have assembled cannot keep up with the support and maintenance of what you have and yet still create new. And it happens anywhere from, an RPA standpoint, when you have several dozen automations in play, several hours of this going on. There's a lot of, things when you have enough models or data that doesn't seem to be right. There's a point, though, a tipping point, that if you have not integrated support and this approach from the beginning, you run a big risk of getting stall delayed, which affects your ROI, your delivery, and kind of the, if you will, brand of what you've tried to create internally for your intelligent automation program. So you do need internal experts. You do need some external ones, in my professional opinion, to really kick this off, make this right, and make it go faster with less risk and more pointed and to align to those business goals and mission statement.
And Tom, I promise maybe a 1.5 minute case study. So, often when you're as you're talking about experts and support, the reality is that building intelligent automation is more of a process than it is, say, a discrete project. Because as you build the automation and you connect with certain systems and you adapt to certain processes, the reality is that over time they change. When humans are doing these processes, we have some retraining and they learn how to access to different system. But as an example, working with a clothing company, they actually make kind of high fashion clothing. and their process that they automated was around managing tariffs and various taxes associated with their supply chain. And that's as we learn, a very fluid part of the business, because as we all certainly know, it's politically charged. Tariffs based on countries and rules change a lot. The internal systems are always changing, and the systems that our client was working with as relates to their trading partners in the supply chain changed a lot. So in working with us, they just let us handle that as the experts. Once the actual automation went in place, the maintenance and the update and the continuing support, we did that. And that, again, let them continue to focus on their business, look for other opportunities for intelligent automation. And it was our responsibility to be experts on these new changes in, say, tariff law. But additionally, as their systems and their vendor systems were changing, that was our job, right? So they were kind of abstracted from the complexity that, again, all of what we talked about today is allowing people to go do more productive things than they could in the absence of intelligent automation. So that's why having us as expertise supporting the maintenance function made a lot of sense for them. Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, implementation. I love this. If you're not first, you're last. A little Ricky Bobby reference there. Though I forget his name. Is it Cal? I think it's Cal from the. If you haven't seen the movie Talladega Nights, it's a gorgeous picture. Thank you.
Cal Milton Jr. I'll let you go.
I love it. Love it. But here, the idea behind that is have the mentality to go fast. It's okay to go quickly, because if you follow a typical implementation process, you do not have to weight it down with too much process itself. Just follow the same patterns of making sure technical environments are set up from development to test to production to upgrade. Make sure you have a backlog that's prioritized the value. You've taken the first steps maybe on that backlog to take maybe a little less risky automation to begin with. Make sure maybe the steps or the checks are in place that when the first couple, before you fully automate it, you've kept the human in the loop. You follow a methodology, either be agile or waterfall. You really could apply either here. Maybe agile fall is what I call it. Some kind of, I didn't really like that. Let's do it this way. Or we need to, be flexible with, maybe you have to modify the process slightly for the automation. There's a number of ways you do this. And then when you get in development, you've done a lot of things ahead of time. You've created a design document, a process design document. You've gotten sign off from the right people that everyone's in agreement that this is how the process was. This is how the automation will do it. This is what we expect for results. This is the use case. Having some type of formula from pushing that through, and you do it in the right size. Think t-shirt, small, medium, large, extra large, and you're keeping these automations and things that these use cases you're tackling to the small and medium level. Your adoption's faster. It's easier to understand. It's easier to develop, implement. It's easier to test. It's easier for the teams to go and do code reviews. Yes, you need code reviews. Joe, just because this is a simpler technology on the surface, having good architecture, having modular design helps reusability. It helps for debugging. It helps for upgrades. It helps when your systems change. You need to go through and do a mass refactor. Do the code reviews. This may be a good spot to leverage an expert. This might be a good spot to leverage, an internal resource if that's all they're doing. But you need to do these. These are very important steps, because once you deploy, you're going to need to support it. And once you support it, it's a lot cheaper and a lot easier and a lot faster to keep automation and things in intelligent automation space up and running with a good set of technology principles behind it. So go fast, but don't overthink it. Get through it. Make sure you follow good practice events to go, from a methodology to do this. So ongoing support. There's a few different ways we can look at this. You're going to need to support it. This is not even a tree that you need to water. This is a whole garden or a forest that you're going to start planting of digital workers that's going to need support and care and attention. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this. You could toss it over the wall. And what I mean by that is, okay, here, outsource provider that I've not included the entire time, take care of my mess. Probably not the best, way to do that, but there are organizations that is absolutely the culture. You take care of it, and then so be it. But it's a little more expensive, probably way to do this, because the management and the time needed to do that is considered. But you really do need to consider how your organization acts today. So if you've never outsourced a day in your life, that's going to be probably not the best. If you've done everything internally, then you have to see, is this really my core competency to be writing automations? Do I do everything internally on IT side or on a business side? Can I leverage, working with a partner to help me accelerate and maintain, but keep my kind of core competency around what I do as a business? Do I want this black box, meaning like you completely outsource the function to a third party and they automate, they take care of it, they maintain it, they use best-in-class technology, they support it, there's SLAs, and you don't have to worry about it. All you care about is getting your automation ran and make sure it's working and it's accelerating your business. You didn't have to, you can buy it as a service. And you have to adapt to change. So that means is that business and technology are rapidly changing and they're going to continue. And having the culture and the mindset that I'm going to need to be able to leverage technology as a business strategy is got to be core and fundamental to almost anything that's being done right now. And if you didn't think so, if you look at like even restaurants, let's say, they went, a lot of them, from people in person, they got credit cards and all of them ever did that. And all of a sudden now, if you're not selling online, if you're not having the ability to use technology to fulfill orders and maintain your delivery and your logistics, you're in a lot of hurt. And you could take that type of scenario, if you will, and extrapolate that to a number of organizations. Final step. Look at that, coming in at 246. So step 10 is you're in an intelligent automation journey. You're on a path, and you're going to have a lot of opportunity to innovate. And this is going to spark a lot of innovation in your organization and you, as you can see how these technologies actually work, what they can really do. And you'll be in a run mode already. There's no really crawling or walking here. Once you start automating, you'll see the power of what you could do, and you'll be like, oh man, I could really transform how I sell this technology or what this product is or what I should offer. You're on a road to innovation, and it will likely still align to your mission statement of what is it you're trying to accomplish with intelligent automation. And you'll expand that use case. You'll extend the capabilities in a very smart way, in a very methodical way that helps drive revenue, helps to decrease cost, makes your employees happy to be there, and it helps you obtain new and keep customers. Once you've done this, you truly transform your company. You've put it in a position to survive and thrive. And if you keep focusing on your customers and employees, just as a fundamental rule, I've seen that be the number one reason of success. And when anybody's just focusing on cost, or they're only focusing on revenue, that mindset tends to lead to burnout and failure of an intelligent automation path. When it's really guided towards the customer and the employee that works for you, the success factor tends to be much higher. Now, before I think we go to the next step, I think I was looking at the poll, and I appreciate everyone for voting. I'm blown away. 100% say that the demand outpaces the supply. That is, you rarely see 100% on any poll unless it's one voter, but there are multiple ones on this one. So thank you for that. It's really good to know, and I hope we can help you with the supply side of it. So I encourage you to follow up with me. And I have a couple other use cases that I've seen, and the two that I'm going to show you is a very small company, has about 2 million revenue, and another one has billions. And this one is really interesting because they were trying to grab from a web portal jobs so they could schedule their people to go and show up, and they were having an incredible challenge with this, where they have to go in manually, they have to go grab it, it's a different system, then they had to go reconcile it with another system, grab the job order from a third system, put it all into an Excel, take that Excel to another person who had uploaded it to another piece. And what we ended up doing was just automating that whole piece, taking it from jobs, putting it right into the other system, grabbing the right person by geolocation, and it was scheduled while they slept. They'd wake up in the morning with a few that would kick out because the field was missing, or there was nobody available, or something was wrong. But then they were spending the morning, from 8 to 9, just finishing that, as opposed to getting until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and still had not had a job scheduled, which their performance then would suffer with the people that were getting these jobs. Really, really decreased it by almost 90%, and really reduced the amount of errors that were in the human key and data errors that aren't even accounted in that 90%. Another one is a massive company that was doing hundreds of thousands of invoices actually a month. And they were using dozens of people offshore to validate the invoices, to do the three-way match, leverage this technology called intelligent document processing, which mixes OCR and machine learning together. And 75% of these invoices could be three-way matched and straight through processing. That number, I would assume, is going to go up. This was a year or so or more ago, and the technology's actually made a leap where out of the gate we're seeing 75 almost untrained on the system. So the technology's progressed. I would guess that's probably closer to 85, 90 at this point here a year later, and really powerful. So if you're a small business that has a number of invoices, I mean hundreds or thousands, you can buy this for pennies on a page to get your invoices processed and three-way matched. It's incredible. So if you have a handful of people doing this, or it's taking too long to pay people, you can't negotiate good terms, all these things, this is a great technology set to look at where you can leverage something that even $1 billion company came, because it still comes down to you're just paying per page per process. Paying per page per invoice or form or whatever it is that actually gets processed. You don't get charged for the ones that don't. And you don't need people around that. You just need provide the invoices, provide the data, provide the forms. Very powerful. And I appreciate, by the way, everyone's time. I think, Steve, why don't you take this, talk about what we can do for you and how we can maybe make this, if you are interested in a workshop that helps outline the strategy and the path forward in our quick strike.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. So the point of the quick strike is to quickly, meaning, and to be specific somewhere in the area of 2 to 4 hours, assemble business leaders. And we, of course, want the IT folks in there as well. And again, as I've hopefully done today, let me just give you a really quick example. I'm going to go back to a different hospital system, and I'll talk about their problems. Again, I mentioned a use case before about health information management, but also revenue cycle. But we did a quick strike. And let me just again briefly describe the format and the content and the deliverable. The agenda was to get the folks together to understand, their most pressing challenges from a strategic and a tactical level. We gave them and their leadership and education kind of a little bit of a slant or a kind of an iteration of what you've seen here, just to make sure everyone was grounded on the concepts, the basics of intelligent automation. We then also described the criteria that make for the optimum use cases. So it was kind of academic discussion, but of course we grounded it in their business, right? In the case of managing records or handling the interplay, especially with insurance companies and claims and receivables. So that's revenue cycle. That was the first hour. Then we kind of had a workshop format once kind of everyone was grounded in the basics. And we went around the room, and it was just amazing how many specific use cases the business leadership kind of brought to the workshop and to this quick strike workshop. So we ended up with somewhere in the neighborhood of around kind of 24 ideas. And then the third part of the quick strike was we all together went through and we kind of looked at the criteria. So imagine, if you will, a spreadsheet of rows and columns. The rows were the use case ideas, the columns were the criteria, and we went through them together and kind of applied metrics to each. At the end of this, we kind of had a sequence or a prioritization of the use cases, all done very quantitatively, all done collaboratively between the business leadership and the technology. When that workshop concluded, we then promised to our client, this is all part of the scope of the quick strike, to come back to them and give them some estimation on team, time, and duration of the level of efforts, right? Because we also, of course, not only understood the process, but by having the technology folks in the room, we were also able kind of to understand, if you will, the technology complexity, how many systems are involved, what interfaces, what were the APIs, how would we gain access to systems, how would we move the data. We came back to them about 3 or 4 business days later, presented the various the work efforts, the work breakdown structures, and the estimates associated with each of the high priority use cases. In this example, we ended up with about 6 that they deemed to be kind of at the top of the pyramid. And they then got an understanding of cost, time, dimension, etc. And that was basically the deliverable. In this particular case, of course, the client then wanted to work with us to execute across the high priority use cases that we had identified. But the Quick Strike really framed this for them, captured their biggest challenges, and kind of gave them an actionable deliverable. And that Quick Strike and workshop is something that we would be happy to offer to new customers as well. And of course, if you look on the panel, you can see an actual website where you can learn more and give us information so that we or Tom could follow up directly with you.
Thank you, Stephen. I believe that's the end of our presentation here. We have about 5 minutes if anybody has any questions.
So, Sebastian, if you wouldn't mind, if any questions have come in, it would be a good time for Tom and I to respond to that.
Has the mute button gotten him? It may have happened. It happens to me all the time. Maybe there's no questions.
Yep. I'm sure there's questions. Let me see if I can.
Technology says you can't unmute. Perfect. You only had, Sebastian, I can give you an automation for that, to click that. Okay.
So let's do this. We can certainly reach out to those that have submitted questions and make sure we get those answers to them.
Yeah, sorry about the technology challenge there. That would actually be a really good one to follow up with, and happy to do that. Conscious of time, maybe meetings backing up to that. Any questions you have, please, put them in chat or however we need to submit them, and I'll personally respond to you for that. And I really do appreciate the time of everyone today and the hour that you've given us. Thank you so much. I think Sebastian